yesterday. Shit went down in the UK. Like, seriously. Like, riots broke out. People broke into hotels. People were breaking into like the Holiday Inn. I was like, what is going on in the UK? There was chaos in the streets. Chaos in the streets. And I said, I have to cover this story because this is crazy. I want to talk about why this started to begin with, because the reporting that was first announced is that there are these extreme right-wing groups that are out on the streets and they're just attacking everybody in the UK. And I was like, let's see what prompted that. So let's get into this clip here from Sky News. I'm telling you, it's crazy in the UK right now.
Joining me from London is writer, broadcaster and presenter Esther Kraku. Esther, these are just such ugly scenes. Take us through how it started and how it's got so out of control.
These scenes that we're seeing are undoubtedly horrific, and the background story or what ignited them is even more so. So 3 young children and a dance teacher were fatally stabbed at a dance class, a Taylor Swift themed dance class in Southport last week. And there were...
Let me pause for a second. Yes, she said it was a Taylor Swift teen dance class. So there were 3 people that were stabbed there. Like, it's crazy.
Rumors online, some have attributed it to Russian misinformation, that the person who stabbed these young children to death and stabbed 8 others who are still in critical condition in hospital was a Muslim that came across illegally on the small boats from France.
Pause. So everybody hear what started all of this? This is important to pay attention to. So what was said is that there was a Muslim person that came across the border illegally and apparently killed someone. And that's what prompted all this, right? So she is saying that is where the riots actually came from that rhetoric. But she also stated that people are saying that was not correct information. All right. Okay. Let's go back a little bit. And by the way, I want this green shirt. That is a pretty green shirt.
Was a Muslim that came across illegally on the small boats from France. Now we have been able to ascertain that the person who committed these atrocities allegedly is a 17-year-old boy and son of Rwandan immigrants. Now, nothing else is known of this person's background. There have been rumors that he suffered from some sort of mental health issue. We don't know anything. But this sort of whipped up a storm and has ignited the kind of sort of community fury that have led to these riots. Now, as you said in your monologue, which was excellent, by the way, there are a lot of these people that are just racist thugs that have nothing better to do, that are just trying to, defame and disgrace the memory of these children that were lost by attacking police, by burning cars and throwing rocks through buildings and businesses and mosques. But actually, like you said, there is a second story to this, which is this didn't happen in isolation. How did community relations break down to such an extent that we saw this effectively unrelated, from what we know so far, issue? And it's because of the decades-long protests by people in this country that are saying, listen, mass immigration is a massive issue. The lack of integration is a massive issue. Multiculturalism has failed. You cannot have people coming into this country without integrating. You cannot have people living parallel lives and effectively being allowed to do so by the liberal elite that have run this country since 1997, basically.
Pause. So does everybody see what's happening in the UK? So there apparently are at least enough people to cause riots in the streets that are very unhappy about the immigration situation. People that, and I agree with her when she said, I think some of those people were just racist to begin with. That's probably the case. And they probably use that as an excuse. But there have been a number of people that have chosen to seek out some type of violence to push back on immigration that is happening. Now, again, this is the UK. That's just our 51st state, if you want to call it that. I don't know. But I mean, it's very telling and it says something. But the violence that they decided to display, it was against people just based on race. Like, it's not like they went after that teenager who she described as having a mental health issue. It's not like they went after him. They went after anybody that was a person of color. They just started attacking people in the streets. Like, this was wild.
I mean, it's quite telling that when Keir Starmer went to lay wreaths to memorialize the deaths of these individuals that were lost at the dance class, there were people saying, shouting at him and heckling him, saying, who's next? If we can't protect our own children, who is next? Now, you couldn't have imagined that happening in 1997 when Tony Blair became prime minister, but it's indicative of how far community relations have broken down. You have communities that are living alongside each other that cannot stand each other. And the unfortunate and uncomfortable reality is we have let too many people into this country that, quite frankly, hate Britain.
Pause. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to have a deep conversation, and I'm glad we're going to have call in tonight. I think we need to really talk about this because I'm hearing similarities that we have here in the United States, right? First of all, Keir Starmer just became prime minister. Like, he literally just won. I feel like I just covered the story. And now we have this situation to deal with. So she is saying that we have people living in this country that can't stand living next door to each other. There are people in the UK, she said, that really just don't want people coming there that have issues with Britain. And I hear this, and although it's the UK, but I hear some of the same rhetoric here in the United States. And it makes me wonder, right? Is this us next? We haven't even gotten to the full footage yet. Just wait for that.
You didn't see this kind of rhetoric when the Rotherham gangs happened. Actually, when the Rotherham gangs happened, you didn't see any sort of riots. You didn't see, politicians storming out of Westminster, but you did see them storming out of Westminster in some sort of farcical theatre when the Gaza vote happened a few months ago. And people are thinking, you don't care that white working class girls were abused systemically by these grooming gangs in places like Rotherham. You don't care. You didn't storm out of Westminster. Nothing happened. There was no, parade or grand show of anger. But when something like a Gaza vote, which is something that really is happening thousands of miles away from Britain, is happening, they storm out. And people are really getting a sense that the politicians running this country have not only betrayed us time and time again, but they fundamentally hate this country. And they're aiding and abetting people that hate this country. There's so many statistics with regards to policing and crime in this country that makes people feel like Britain is now a lawless place. Across 168 districts in London, areas in London, the Metropolitan Police have not solved one petty crime that includes car thefts, burglary, in 3 years.
Does that sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen? Because she's venting right now like they went to the wrong one. Does that sound familiar? The number of times like I've complained that police aren't really solving any crime here in the United States. Politicians have betrayed the people, she has said. Does that sound familiar? Yeah.
You have protests that have been going on in the streets of London for months now that the police have just been letting go on, even though there are hateful chants, there are hateful things going on there. You have Islamist preachers on the streets of this country that are radicalizing people and teaching people how to attack and hate this country, and nothing has been done. And so while this act of vandalism and these riots by these thugs, as you rightly said, is horrible, it didn't happen in a vacuum. And now we have this uncomfortable conversation that we have to have, which is what has happened to this country? What has happened to community relations? How has multiculturalism failed? And how can we bring this country back together? Because I fear that if something doesn't happen, this will only be the beginning.
So let me pause here for a second and just say this. Now it goes back to the Israel talking point, right? So notice she said, we've had protests in the UK for months. Those are the pro-Palestinian protests. That's what she's referring to. There may have been others, but let's be real. For months, it's been the pro-Palestinian protests. I've covered those on the show. They've been all across the world, in particular London, right? So you see what she's trying to hint towards. She's like, we have Islamic preachers in the streets trying to radicalize people. So it sounds like similar talking points that we've been hearing here in the US by those who are pro-Israel that wanted to crack down on the protests that we've had here. Now, let's get into, because this is a doozy, right? Let's get into Sky News. This one from Sky News. There's a reporter who's in the streets, and I want you to hear what she is saying. Because you got to remember, again, a lot of times when I was waiting for her to say that, the first time I watched that video was about the protest. That's what it's really coming down to, folks. So they're trying to, this is an excuse for them to be able to use to say, well, a Muslim person came across the border and killed people in this country. And so people are all radicalized because of all the protests and the teachings in the streets in support of the Palestinian people. People are all radicalized and all kinds of things are happening. All kinds of people coming in this country and trying to radicalize and all that kind of stuff. And when she says people who are pro-Britain, I still feel like that's a disguise for pro-Israel, because we've heard people say that same rhetoric here in the United States, and they say you have to be pro-American, but then they'll turn around and say, oh yeah, Israel first. Is it America first or is it Israel first? So pay attention to that, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and bring in this reporter here. She's out on the streets. Listen to this.
There'd been rumours of a far-right protest in Birmingham, so dozens of Asian men decided to get here first. Many were wearing balaclavas or face masks, one man armed with what appeared to be a bat. This had been organised by men who've had enough of the violence towards Muslims.
This is now another.
So this is the other side that you get to hear from now, right? So these are Muslim residents in the UK, and they're like, yo, we're getting tired of this. We're tired of people just coming up and attacking us. Listen.
The group that's just been set.
Earlier, this community activist showed me a WhatsApp group with over 1,000 members wanting to stand up to racist mobs.
Hopefully the police would take care of us. But if they don't, we would obviously be willing to take care of ourselves.
And how far would you go to do that?
Well, me personally, you know, I'm not one of those elements that would go, I'm not willing to go to jail.
Good answer. Good answer. He let people know, look, I'm not one of the ones willing to go to jail. Remember, I'm on camera. Good answer.
It's the anger. He's been urging restraint.
The message that we are sending out as a community is that don't take the law into your own hands.
As protesters gathered and we attempted to report live, it became clear the media weren't welcome.
So you see what this reminds me of here? It reminds me of the counter protesters.
The media weren't.
The counter protesters that arrived at UCLA and started beating up the students that had the encampments outside UCLA. That's what this reminds me of. So here they are going after apparently Muslim people. I saw videos of a black guy being attacked, Asians being attacked. Like, this is insane. Like, it's crazy. These are basically race riots that are happening in the UK. Don't ask me about the UK police, because I don't know what's going on with all of that. But it's sad that it has come to this. It really is. And I point the fingers back towards like Israel, because there's so much hatred, and there already was some hatred for Muslim people. But as you notice in the UK, this is increasing now. Ay.
Welcome.
A sense of anger, I think you can hear there.
We decided to leave, but as we drove away, this man armed with a knife attempted to slash a tire.
Yeah, so we'll have to skip past that part for just a second. Yeah, so that guy tried to like slash the tire in a car. Like, it's just, and you'll see here, I'll bring in this video as well. This is crazy.
He witnessed has been caused by riots like this. An asylum hotel in Tamworth was set alight by a far-right mob. Trapped inside, asylum seekers filmed from the top floors.
Yeah, so this was a Holiday Inn in the UK that was attacked. This is crazy. Like, I mean, could you imagine if like you're in a hotel and all this starts to happen? But notice what she said. She said there are asylum seekers that are staying in that hotel. So now you have UK residents attacking asylum seekers. Again, where are the police? Right. So this is another example where I told you before that the police don't really prevent crime. Like, I don't. How many times to explain?
As outside, racist graffiti was left on the walls. By morning, the migrants had been moved away. Attempts underway to erase what had happened, but for many, the damage has been done. This nearby shop is run by a couple who now feel under threat.
Not many Asian live in Tamworth. We do feel a bit scared. We've never felt like this the way we are feeling now.
This hotel has been housing asylum seekers for years. The question now for those who provide support for the migrants is should they return once the hotel is repaired?
If the hotel closes down as a result of the violence, then does that give those with a particular view a win? Or, is it about, obviously we want to make sure people are safe.
And that is the fear, with tension across communities still building by the...
There's a guy walking on top of the hold on. Look up at the top. Look at towards the left part of my screen here where there's the subway. And look on top of the subway. There's a guy on the roof of the subway. Look.
Across communities still building by the day. Becky Johnson, Sky.
Yeah, it's sad. It's unfortunate, you guys. I mean, I think there is a lot of ignorance surrounding whether it's people of different races, different cultures. I think there's a lot of ignorance in the world. And this is not just an issue in the United States. And some people aren't going to like this, but the reality is, as time goes on and as these wars continue, we are going to see more migration. And I'm not even talking about people migrating to the US or people migrating to the UK, but I even predict, and I said this a while back, I predict that more Americans are going to migrate. I predict that more, particularly the younger people, they are going to move and they are going to live in countries that are more affordable just because they can't afford to buy housing, buy a house here, and the rent continues to increase. Nico said it when he was on the panel the other day. He said $400 to rent a house in Brazil. So as an American, there's some of these countries that you can go to and you can live very well while you're trying to, pinch dollars here in the United States. As time goes on, more migration is going to continue. So the question is, what do we do about this? How do we learn to be more educated about different cultures, different issues? I'm not speaking for myself. I grew up around different people, but there's something happening there in the UK to the point where the Muslim couple that was in the store said they don't feel safe living there anymore. Something happening across the world, right? So Keir Starmer, again, who just became prime minister, did speak about this. Let's get into that.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests. Individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow, and convictions will follow. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves.
Why do I not believe him? Why do I not take him seriously? I don't know what it is, but it's just something about him that I just feel do you guys really think he's going to round up all of them? Did you notice in the videos, a lot of them were wearing masks? So how are you going to find out who all those people were? I don't know, dude.
This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery. And it has no place on our streets or online. Right now, there are attacks happening on a hotel in Rotherham. Marauding gangs intent on law-breaking, or worse. Windows smashed, fire set ablaze, residents and staff in absolute fear. There is no justification, none, for taking this action. And all right-minded people should be condemning this sort of violence. People in this country have a right to be safe. And yet, we've seen Muslim communities targeted, attacks on mosques, other minority communities singled out, Nazi salutes in the street, attacks on the police, wanton violence alongside racist rhetoric. So no, I won't shy away from calling it what it is: far-right thuggery. To those who feel targeted because of the colour of your skin or your faith, I know how frightening this must be. I want you to know that this violent mob do not represent our country, and we will bring them to justice.
Let me just pause here for a second. You sure about that, Kier? Let's hear what.
And we will bring them to justice.
So, I don't know, Kier. Like I'm not convinced. like I'm not afraid. I don't know. I'm Eminem right now. I'm like, I'm not afraid. I don't know. I'm not shaking here. I don't know, Kier. I think that sentiment came from somewhere, right? I mean, because for the longest time, especially after October 7th, let's keep it real. Rishi Sunak, who was in that position, was making a lot of excuses for Israel, calling just about everything under the sun anti-Semitic. He was following the U.S. lead, what we were doing. So when you say this is not who we are, I don't know. I mean, like, you have the royal family. We can go through the history, boo, because I know a lot of it. We have the royal family. You have to think about some of the people that were members of the royal family. There was a Nazi member of the royal family, right? You have to think about some of the racism that took place in the royal family, not just the classism. Let's get down to it. I don't know. I don't really know. So it came from somewhere. It just reminds me when like Kamala Harris said this, and of course, Jim Clyburn said it, and Tim Scott said, America's not a racist country, remember? And Nikki Haley said that, and they were like, no, this is not who we are. I'm like, maybe this is who we are. I mean, like, America is a violent country. It was born on violence. Like, let's keep it real. So I don't know, Kier. Like, I'm just not convinced. I don't know. But the reality is, folks, like, it's very scary. It's very telling. And I think that at some point or another, there needs to be a deeper conversation about why people are migrating throughout the world. What is causing it? I always go back to the geopolitical conflict. I told you guys, like the wars and the sanctions on those countries and all that kind of stuff. But regardless of that, the amount of hatred that is on full display in the UK, just them all just going out, just attacking, people who are not white. It's crazy in 2024. Ay. And there's all different cultures that live in the UK. So not a good start to his position as prime minister. Not saying he caused that, but this is not a good start to his position. And it really goes to show you that although we talk about race in America, if you look at other countries as well, if you look at the UK, there's still a long way to go. Long way to go.